Section 22 of Amadis of Gaul. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Amadis of Gaul by Vasco de Lobeira, translated by Robert Southey. Book the Second. Chapter 10. How the damsel of Denmark went in search of Amadis, and by adventure, after much toil, came to the poor rock where Amadis was, who called himself Beltenebros. 10 days that damsel of Denmark remained in Scotland, not so much for pleasure, as because she had suffered much from the sea, and for the ill success of her search, and she feared that to return, when she had sped so ill, would be the death of her mistress. At length she took her leave, and receiving presents from the Queen of Scotland to Queen Brisena and Oriana and Mabilia, she embarked for Great Britain, not knowing what other course to pursue. But that Lord of the world, who to those who are utterly without hope or remedy shows something of his power, that we may know it is he that helpeth us, and not our own wisdom, he changed her voyage, to her own great fear, and the fear and sorrow of all in the ship, for the sea began to rage, and such a tempest arose, that the sailors lost all power over the ship, and all knowledge of their course, and the ship was driven whither the winds would, they that were in her having no hope of life. At last one morning they came to the foot of the poor rock. Some of them knew the place, and said that Andalod the hermit lived there, which when the damsel heard, she ordered them to put to land, that being rescued from such a danger she might hear mass from that holy man, and return thanks to the Virgin Mary for the mercy which her glorious Son had shown them. Beltenebros was sitting at this time by the fountain under the trees, where he had passed the night, and he was now so reduced that he did not expect to live 15 days. What with weeping and with the wasting away of sorrow, his face was more deadly pale than sickness could have made it, and so worn down and wan that no one could have known him. He saw the ship and the damsels and 2 squires landing, but his thoughts being wholly bent upon death, the things that once gave him pleasure, as in seeing strangers, that he might help them if they needed succor, now had become hateful. So he rose and went into the chapel, and told the hermit that there were strangers landed and coming up, and then he knelt before the altar, and prayed God to have mercy upon his soul, for he was soon going to his account. The hermit vested himself to say mass, and the damsel, with Durin and Enil, entered. After she had prayed, she uncovered her face. Beltenebros rose from his knees, and seeing her and Durin, the shock was so great that he fell down senseless. The hermit thought him dead, and exclaimed, "Ah, Lord Almighty! why has it not pleased thee to have pity upon him who might have done so much in thy service?" And the tears fell fast adown his long white beard. "Good damsel," said he, "let these men help me to carry him to his chamber. I believe it is the last kindness we can do him." Enil and Durin assisted to lift him up, and they carried him into his chamber, and laid him upon a poor bed, and neither of them knew him. After the damsel had heard mass, she resolved to make her meal ashore, for she was weary of the sea. So by chance she asked who that poor man was, and what sore sickness afflicted him. "He is a knight who liveth here in penance. He is greatly to be blamed," quoth she, "to choose so desert a place." "It is as you say," replied the hermit, "for he has done so for the foolish vanities of the world, more than for the service of God." "I will see him," said the damsel, "since you tell me he is a knight. Perhaps there may be something in the ship which would relieve him." "That you may do, but he is so near his end that I believe death will ease you of that trouble." Beltenebros was lying upon his bed, thinking what he should do. If he made himself known, that would be breaking his lady's command, and if he did not, he should remain without any hope or possible remedy. But he thought to disobey her would be worse than death, and so determined to be silent. The damsel came to the bedside, and said, "Good man, I learn from the hermit that you are a knight, and because damsels are beholden to all knights for the dangers they encounter in our defence, I resolved to see you, and leave with you anything which is in the ship that may contribute to your health." He made her no answer, but sobbed with such exceeding passion that she thought his soul was departing, and because the room was dark, she opened a shutter for the light, and drew near to see if he were dead. They looked at each other some time, and the damsel knew him not. At last she saw a scar in his face. It was the mark of a wound which Arcalaus had given him with his lance, when Oriana was rescued. Then, though before she had no suspicion, she knew that this was Amadis. Ah, Holy Mary, help me, you are he, sir, and fell with her face upon the bed, and knelt down and kissed his hands. Now, sir, said she, your compassion and pardon are needed for her who has wronged you, for if her unjust suspicion have reduced you to this danger, she herself with more reason passes a life more bitter than death. Beltenebros took her in his arms and held her a while, having no power to speak. She then gave him the letter. Your lady sends you this, and she bids you, if you are the same Amadis whom she loves so well, to forget the past, and come to her in the castle of Miraflores, and there receive her atonement for your wrongs which excessive love occasioned. Amadis kissed the letter, and placed it upon his heart, saying, Heart, take thy remedy, for there was none other that could save thee. This was the letter. If great faults committed by enmity, when humbly acknowledged, deserve pardon, what shall we say to those which proceeded from excessive love? Not that by this do I deny, my true friend, that I deserve exceeding punishment, for neither having considered your truth that had never before failed, nor my own mind in how passionate a state it was, I pray you receive this damsel as coming from one who humbly confesseth her fault, and who will tell you the wretchedness which she endures, who requests your pity, not because she deserves it, but for your comfort as well as her own. Such joy had Beltenebros at this letter, that he was lost even as in his past sorrow, and tears that he did not feel ran down his cheeks. It was agreed between them that the damsel should give out how she took him aboard for his health's sake, because on that rock he could have no help, and that as soon as possible they should take land and leave the ship. Beltenebros then told the hermit by what happy chance the damsel had found him, and besought him that he would take charge of the monastery that was to be built by his command at the foot of the rock of the Firm Island. This the old man promised, and Beltenebros then embarked, being known of none but the damsel. They soon landed with the two squires, and left the mariners. Presently they found a pleasant place upon the side of a brook, with many goodly trees, and there they resolved to rest, because Beltenebros was so weak, and there, if it had not been that the absence of his lady afflicted him, he would have passed the pleasantest life, and best for his recovery that might be, for under those trees, where the brook springs arose, they had their meals, and there was their tent for the night. There related they to each other all that had passed, and a pleasure was it now to him to talk over his misery. 10 days they remained, and in that time he so regained his strength that his heart felt its old inclination for arms. He made himself known to Durin there, and took Enil for his squire, who knew not whom it was that he served, but was well content with him for his gentle speech. Hence departing in 4 days they reached a nunnery. There they determined that he and Enil should abide, while the damsel and her brother went to Miraflores. She then gave Beltenebros money to buy horses and armour, and for his wants, and she left behind her part of the Queen of Scotland's presents, that she might send Durin for them as if they had been forgotten, and so he might bring news. Chapter 11. How Don Galaor and Florestan and Agrayes, having gone a long time in search of Amadis and found no trace of him, came all disconsolate to the court of King Lisuarte. After their year's vain search, Agrayes, Galaor, and Florestan met at the place appointed, which was a chapel half a league from London. Gandalin came with Florestan, and when he found no tidings of his master, he said to them that they should leave their lamentation and begin their search again, remembering what Amadis would have done for them if they had been in like case. So they determined to enter the court, and if they learned nothing there, to set out again upon their quest, and they wept to think how happily they had accomplished all adventures that had befallen them, and yet had failed to find him whom they sought. Then having heard mass at the chapel, they rode towards the city. It was St. John's day, and presently they met King Lisuarte riding out with all his knights in honour of that holy day, because the saint was so great a saint, and also because on that day he had been made king. When he saw 3 errant knights approaching, he drew nigh to welcome them. Great joy was there when they unhelmed, and at first Lisuarte thought Florestan was Amadis, for he had resembled him, but Gandalin and the dwarf, when they beheld this meeting, wept with great grief. The news soon spread. Greatly was Corisanda rejoiced thereat, and Olinda, the gentle friend of Agrayes, who knew how he had passed under the arch of true lovers. Mabilia, in joy for her brother's coming, went for Oriana, who was sitting sorrowfully at her chamber window, reading. She answered, weeping and sighing as if her heartstrings would have broken, How can I go? Do you not see my face and eyes, how they show that I have been weeping? And how can I see those knights in whose company I was wont to see Amadis? It is better to die. Mabilia comforted her how she could, the damsel might yet bring tidings. Nay, quoth Oriana, if these knights have failed, who have sought him so far and so long, how shall she succeed, a woman, and seeking him but in one place? But she may induce him to discover himself, said Mabilia, for she carries comfort to him, and knows the secret of his love, which they did not. So she cheered her, and made her wash her eyes, and called Olinda to go with them to the queen. Look, quoth the king to Galaor, how ill your friend Oriana is. I grieve to see her thus, replied he. Reason is it that we should try to help her health by our services. My good friend Galaor, said she, God it is who heals sickness and sorrow, and if it pleaseth him, he will me, and recover your brother Amadis, whom you have lost and whom we all lament. Anon an outcry was heard without, for Gandalin and the dwarf seeing their master's shield where it was hung, began to lament aloud, and the knights were comforting them. What, cried Lisuarte, is Gandalin here? Florestan answered, I met him 2 months ago seeking for his master, and made him bear me company. I hold Gandalin, said the king, to be one of the best squires in the world, and we ought to comfort him. So he rose and went out to him. When Oriana heard the name of Gandalin, and the lamentation that he was making, she grew pale, and would have fallen, but Galaor and Florestan caught her. Mabilia, who knew the cause, ran to her and put her arms round her neck. Good and true friends, then said Oriana to the 2 brethren, if I do not show you what honour I ought and desire to show, I pray you impute it to its true cause, this sore illness. And then she went to her chamber. Dear friend, said she to Mabilia, since we entered this city of London, I have never been without some cause of sorrow. Let us go to Miraflores, that is a delightful place, and there I can have the comfort of solitude. We will ask your parents' permission, said Mabilia, and there the damsel of Denmark will find us, and there you may the more freely see him when he shall be found. Ah, quoth Oriana, let us lose no time. This castle of Miraflores was about 2 leagues from London, a little place, but the pleasantest abode in all the land, for it was in a wood by the side of a mountain, surrounded with orchards and gardens that abounded with fruits and flowers, and there were fountains in the courts canopied with trees that all the year round bore flower and fruit. The king one day had taken the queen and the princess there when he was hunting, and because the princess was much pleased with the place, he gave it her for her own. About a bowshot from the gate was a nunnery, which she had founded, and there were nuns in it of holy life, so that night she asked permission of Lisuarte and her mother to retire there, which was readily granted. The king being at table with Agrayes and his cousins, said to them, I trust we shall have good news of Amadis, for I have sent 30 knights of the best of my household to seek him, and if they fail, take you as many as you will and seek him. But I beseech you do not depart till after a battle which has been appointed between me and Kildadan of Ireland, who is a king renowned in arms, and has married the daughter of King Abies, whom Amadis slew. The battle is to be 100 against 100, and the quarrel this, that kingdom has been obliged to pay tribute to the kings of Britain. Kildadan demands battle on condition that if he be conquered, the tribute should be doubled, but if he succeed, the country shall be freed therefrom. I trow he will need all his knights and friends. The three companions, albeit loath to have their search delayed, yet could they not refuse to stay and share the peril. After the cloths were removed, Florestan bade Gandalin go to Mabilia, who wished to see him. He went accordingly, and when they saw each other they both wept. Ah, lady, quoth he, what great wrong hath Oriana done to you and to your lineage, in depriving you of the best knight in the world! And what wrong hath she done to him, who never erred against her in deed nor word? Ill hath God bestowed such beauty and such goodness, when this could be in her, and yet none hath lost so much by it as herself. Say not thus, Gandalin, cried Mabilia. What she did was from exceeding love, and in the belief that he was loving another. And then she related all that had been said by Ardian concerning the broken sword. O God, quoth Gandalin, where were all your understandings? He would have buried himself alive for her displeasure, and she believed this? And thus is the best knight in the world destroyed? Oriana had listened to all this. She came forward as if she had heard nothing, and weeping so that hardly could she speak, she said, O Gandalin, God preserve and bless you, as you shall do what you ought. Lady, said he, in tears also, what do you command me? Kill me, cried she, for I killed your master, and you should revenge his death as he would have revenged yours. And then she fell senseless. The king bade Grumedan accompany his daughter to Miraflores, and see that there were serving men left there, and porters for the gate, and all things needful. Early the next morning they set out, and when Oriana saw the place, how fresh it was with flowers and roses, and the water pipes and fountains, her mind felt greatly comforted. The keys of the castle and of the garden gates were every night to be carried by the porters to the Abbess Adelasta, that she might keep them securely. I have desired to have the keys by day, said Oriana to Mabilia, that Gandalin may get another set made, so that if by good fortune Amadis should come, he may admit him by the postern door through the garden, and there Oriana determined to remain till she saw Amadis, or till she died in that solitude. Her apartments were full pleasant, and before the chamber door there was a little court wherein 3 trees grew, that quite shadowed it, and there they took their pleasure, but with great anxiety expected the damsel of Denmark and her tidings. The next day the porter came and said, a squire asked for Mabilia. Let him in, quoth Oriana. It is Gandalin, a right good squire, who was brought up with us, and is the milk brother of Amadis, whom God preserve from harm. God preserve him indeed, cried the porter, for great loss to the world would it be if such a knight were to perish. Lo now, said Oriana to her friend, as the porter went away, how Amadis is loved by all, even by these simple men, and I, who was so loved by him, I have been his death. Herewithal Gandalin entered, and Oriana, making him sit by her side, related how she had sent the damsel of Denmark to seek Amadis, and what she had written to him. Think you, Gandalin, said she, that he will forgive me? You little know his heart, lady, quoth the squire. By God, for the least word in the letter he will come. If you bade him he would bury himself alive under the earth. How much sooner will he come at your command? And the damsel of Denmark will sooner find him than all the persons in the world, for if he hid himself from me he will not show himself to another. And you, lady, should take comfort with this hope, lest he should find your beauty so altered when he comes, and fly from you. What, Gandalin! Seem I so ugly? quoth she, being well pleased at his words. You seem so to yourself, said he, that you thus hide yourself where none may see you. I do it to this end, said Oriana, that when thy master cometh, if he would fly he may not be able. She then showed him the keys, and bade him go get others made like them, that when his master came they might admit him at their pleasure. Gandalin took the keys to London, and returned the same night with others so exactly like them, that there was no difference, except that these were new and the others old. Here they are, cried Mabilia, showing them to Oriana. Come, we have supped, and all the people are at rest. Let us try them." They took hand and went in the dark to the posterns that opened from the castle into the garden. When they were near the first, Oriana cried, "I cannot go on, I am dying with fear." "Fear nothing," quoth Mabilia, laughing as she spake, "when I am here to protect you, for I am cousin to the best knight in the world, and am going on his service." Oriana could not but smile. "I will take courage and trust in your prowess in arms." "Come on boldly," quoth Mabilia, "and see how I finish the adventure. If I fail, I swear for one whole year never to hang shield from my neck, nor gird on a sword." In this merry mood she opened the first postern, and presently the other, with as little difficulty, and then they were in the garden. "How will he get over the wall?" cried Oriana. "At yonder corner," replied Mabilia, "there must be a piece of wood laid on the other side, and we will give him our hands here. You must perform this labour, for it is you who will be paid for it." Oriana at this took hold of her cousin's coif and threw it on the ground, and they stood laughing for some time, then returned and fastened the gates and went to rest. As Oriana lay down, Mabilia cried, "I wish that poor wretch were here who is now despairing. Eat, cousin, and sleep, that you may recover your beauty, as Gandalin advised." Chapter 12.